The purpose of a pre-job is to ensure that everyone involved in the planned work are on the same page before any work even begins. The pre-job covers three major areas. One is the work procedure itself, broken down into tasks. The second is hazards associated with the job. And the last is safety measures implemented to mitigate those identified hazards. These safety measures usually consist of personal protective equipment, such as hard hats, body harnesses, hearing protection, energy source controls, like a lockout-tagout procedure, blanks in a gas line, electrical grounds on a de-energized conductor, and special precautions. This can be as simple as installing barricades around an identified hazard, assigning a spotter to monitor the work being conducted, or it may be a bit more involved and specialized, as when work is being conducted in an industrialized processing environment, or where there's the potential of encountering the local wildlife in remote areas. Anyone on the job can be assigned to document the pre-job. That's up to the responsible foreman's discretion. However, regardless of who fills it out, that foreman has the ultimate responsibility of ensuring that it is filled out correctly. And the pre-job isn't merely a document to be passed around the huddle and blindly signed. It is required to be openly discussed. The pre-job is designed to be a template for a 2- and 3-way active communication amongst all crew members prior to any job start. This is to ensure that all the workers know the work that is to be conducted, their individual role and responsibility in the work to be conducted, and how to protect themselves from the identified hazards. If during this pre-job huddle, anyone not understanding any of these points is required by company policy to speak up and get clarification. If they do not, then they are in violation of the safety rules. And keep this in the back of your head. If one person in that huddle has a question, well, it's more than likely at least one other person does as well, and you'll be doing them a favor by speaking up. And speaking of the pre-job huddle, who can host it? Again, that's up to the responsible foreman's discretion. And again, regardless of who hosts it, that foreman has the ultimate responsibility of ensuring that it is openly, candidly, and completely discussed. When that pre-job huddle breaks, there should be no questions left unanswered. A common question of workers is,
how often does this thing gotta be filled out?
Well, firstly, it's got to be filled out and discussed before any work begins. It's not to be filled out after work has started. It's not to be filled out while the work is being conducted. And it's certainly not to be filled out immediately following a phone call informing you that the safety guy is in the area. It must be filled out prior to any work being conducted. Second, a single pre-job does not cover multiple days. If the same type of work is being conducted every day for 5 days, then there must be at least 5 pre-jobs documented, one for each of those days. Expounding on this, if multiple jobs are being conducted in a single day, and those jobs are so similar that they share identical tasks, identical hazards, and identical prescribed safety measures, then that same pre-job may be used for each of those jobs, and that's only if your general foreman permits it.
However,
if those multiple jobs conducted in a single day are so different that they require any changes, additions, or modifications to those tasks, hazards, and/or prescribed safety measures, then an additional pre-job must be conducted for each of those different jobs. Another popular question is,
do I have to fill one of these out if I'm working alone?
Unless management says otherwise, then yes.
Son of a...
Yes, you do. The reason being that if anything happens, if there's a complaint, if there's a customer concern, if there's an OSHA inspection, anything, then there is documented proof that that worker knew the job tasks to be performed at that location and the specific hazards associated with that job. And finally, the crew working that job site is the custodian of that job site. If not the entire job site, then at least their immediate working area. In other words, that crew is responsible for the safety of anyone coming into their area, into their sphere of influence, whether it be the safety guy, our customer rep, the owner of the company, or even OSHA. If anything happens to anyone on that site, that crew will be scrutinized. Because of this, it is the responsibility of at least one member of that crew to intercept any interloper, trespasser, visitor, what have you, before they actually get on the site. After doing so, you just don't give them the pre-job to sign. It must be explained to them. A member of that crew must review with them the tasks being performed on that site as well as the associated hazards. Let that individual know where he or she can or cannot walk, what they should not be touching, how far away they must remain from this or that. Whatever can hurt them, they must be protected against. So if the crew has to wear a hard hat due to a struck by hazard, so too must that interloper. If the crew has to wear safety glasses, then so too does the interloper. The same goes for hearing protection, arc-rated clothing, whatever. If the interloper is not protected from these hazards, then they must either not be allowed on the site or the job site hazards must be mitigated. This usually requires all work to be shut down. If it has been determined that the interloper is allowed on the site, then they must print and sign their name on the pre-job. List their affiliation and time of arrival as well. Sometimes the interloper is not permitted by their employer to sign any other employer's documents. If this is the case, and the responsible foreman is still permitting that interloper to be on the site, then simply print the person's name, affiliation, time of arrival, and a note stating that the pre-job was reviewed with them. If that interloper is not permitted to be on site but refuses to respect that fact by entering anyway, then that site must be made safe as much as practical. Again, this usually means shutting down all the work. This should be immediately followed up by a call to either your supervisor, the customer representative, or both. In short, if your name is not on that pre-job, then you should not be on that site.